Hey, Brian here. Hey, I'm in my backyard today, and I'm going to do a video, a quick follow-up video on the battery issue that I was having about a month ago with the Mavic 2 batteries. I've replaced the batteries that had issues, that they were swelling, and when they swell like that, I'm not going to trust them to fly them or anything. So I went ahead and replaced them. I just bought some new ones, and I've flown those a couple times. But I would like to share with you some tips that I kind of picked up along the way. And like I mentioned many times before, it's very hot here in Houston, and part of the reason why the previous batteries may not have lasted so long was because of the heat, but also because of the way I was treating them post-flight in this heat. So we'll into that here in a second. So you've been flying your Mavic 2. It's hot. Like I said, I bring it down anytime it hits 90 or above, but it's hot, and you bring it back in, get ready to fly another one, you take the battery out. Battery's very warm. Okay. Maybe you set it down here, or maybe you just put it in one of the slots that come with the cases. This is a Dacket case. I've had it since I've had the Mavic, so it's been pretty reliable, but there's a flaw. Take a new battery, pop it in, ready to go. Well, here's the thing though. The battery I just put in there in that slot, the material in these cases is made of poly whatever. It's the same stuff. It's a styrofoam. It insulates. So when I'm putting this battery in here at anywhere from 120 to 145 degrees, when you pop it in there, it's going to stay at 120 to 145 degrees for hours. So just went ahead and flew the second battery, maybe flew a third battery. You're done. Close the case. Let's go home. Yeah, those batteries are sitting there cooking. So that's my bad. I did that the better part of the summer, not realizing how much damage I could have been doing to these batteries. Like I said, I've gotten some new batteries. I have made some changes. So from now on, what I've been doing is when I'm done flying with the battery, I'll take it out, take the battery, and I keep a small cooler with me now. And I keep a small cooler that usually does not have anything in it. But anyway, I keep a small cooler with a single ice block, and I'll take that ice block and cover it with some towels. Take the battery contact side up, place it in there. This particular cooler holds 3 batteries just perfectly. They're snug in there by the time I'm done. So I leave those in there for the ride home. I've thrown a thermometer in there. The temperature in there goes anywhere from 55 to 65 degrees. So it's not a drastic temperature change. It would be normal if you were, say, I don't know, in the Midwestern states where the temperatures don't get as hot as they do here. So it does help the batteries. I'm hoping it helps the batteries get a few more charges than the last 3 did. So I also have an Autel Evo, and I'm also doing the same practice with them as well. I've got 3 batteries with the Evo, and the bad thing about the Evo is you can't really monitor the voltage as well as you can with the Mavic because of the software. One thing I have done though is check the voltage on the Evo before I fly, and then check it right after. Immediately, as soon as I'm done flying, set that thing on the ground before I turn the battery off. Check the voltage, because that's where you'll find your variances, if they're going to vary most of the time. Sometimes they can vary in flight, in which case I'm going to show y'all a software here that I found to be pretty helpful with that type of situation where you're not sure if you're getting a good reading. But I'll get into that here in just a minute. Okay, so we're back here in the man cave where it's about 20 degrees cooler than it was outside. But yeah, the thing I mentioned earlier was about an app that I had learned about earlier this year. Billy Kyle, a YouTube subscriber of mine, who I've learned a lot from. He's very intelligent, very smart, well-spoken, unlike me. He put out a video about a piece of software called Airdata. It's AIRDATA. And I'll put the link up here. So it's kind of long and involved. And he goes into a lot more detail than I'm going to go into here. Suffice to say, if you follow his plan to install it on whatever device you're using, it might be something you find handy. I know, I downloaded it, and it has minutia data, just all kinds of stuff. Even the free version, which is all I use, has all kinds of data on your drone flights, your DJI drone flights, than you can possibly imagine. And I'll go through a few of them here on the screen in just a minute, but the things I'm talking about are flight times. It has a map, of course, of where you flew. It shows all the warnings that happened or came up during the course of your flight, all the alerts during the course of your flight, how hot the battery temperature got during the flight. And that includes each cell of the battery. So it's an interesting app. It takes a little while to learn. It took me actually a little while to download and set up. Generally, I use this on my iPad. It works best with that because I fly most of the times with my iPad, so it just makes more sense to have that app on my iPad. Like I said, the app is free. There are paid versions that, go into the weather conditions of where you were and when you were there. It keeps a running log of all your flights. I think right now in the free version you're only allowed to keep 100 flights, and so you can look back on every one of those flights and see all kinds of details about that flight individually. But I'd just advise you to go ahead and download it, because for battery maintenance, it's something I'm going to be monitoring a lot more, because one of the things that I did was go back a couple months on my flights that I'd taken, and as far back as May, 2 of 3 of my Mavic batteries that failed were showing signs of failure even then. And by that I mean variances of voltage from cell to cell. There's 4 cells in a Mavic battery. There's 3 cells in a Spark. It's another story we'll go into later. But it'll show you the variances that happened anytime during the flight, so that you know to keep an eye on it. But I'll show you here on the screen what those look like. So hang on a sec. All right, just like back in school, this is the slide portion of the class. This here is a photo of a airdata.com website showing all the apps that it works with. Just something you might want to note. Okay, so after you've downloaded the app and set it up, I'd like to bring your attention to the Power tab, which is located over here on the left side of the screen. And once you get into this tab, it'll show you a bunch of information. It explains minor deviations and major deviations. And all these circles right here represent each cell of your battery. And this is your battery serial number, of course. And what this means is how this battery flew during the flight. And in this case, if you notice, there's no real variation. This is one of my new batteries. Flew this one on September 12th. So there was no issues with this, but I'm going to show you one here with one of my older ones that did have an issue. Okay, so this panel is showing my worst battery. This was my number 3 battery. This one was taken back in June. And this is a good example of just how bad of a variation these cells were giving me. As you can see, cell number 4 is in the warning zone. Supposedly it's not critical. And technically it's not. The battery did not blow up. It swelled up, so it wasn't ready to pop yet, but there were all the warning signs. And You know, like I said, at the time I was not monitoring this. Now I wish I had, but be that as it may. Now this panel is a little bit different from the other one. This one is actually showing one of my spark batteries, which I've mentioned in my previous video. As far as I knew, those batteries had no trouble at all. But as you can see, one of my 5 is starting to give me trouble, so I will be monitoring this. These show only 3 cells. They're much smaller battery, as anyone who owns a Spark would know. But just to give you an idea of the variation between the Spark and the Mavic 2, this is what you would be looking at. And as you can see, that cell number 3 is starting to give me trouble. So like I said, I'm glad I'm monitoring this now, so it's definitely something to help keep me more informed. Okay, well that's going to do it for me for this video, and hope you got something out of this. Like I said, it was a learning experience for me over the summer, and especially in the last month or so. But anyway, you know, the whole point here is, I guess in another month or two is going to be moot because the weather's going to be cooling down. But at the same time, you know, there is always next year, next spring, and next summer, so these kind of things, I guess, need to be watched. But I'd appreciate if you have any feedback or anything you might want to add to this. That'd always be greatly appreciated. But for now, you know, I got those beers out of that cooler earlier, and it looked a little too tempting, and I'm still kind of warm, so here's to you. Next time.